through, as Austin said. What I'm going to focus on here is not so much the, let's see here, not so much the what is the licensing process, but really some three key areas that what I consider are the biggest mistakes. And so for those here, how many are familiar with the licensing process? Okay. How many have a lot of questions about the licensing process? Probably so. So, as I said, what we're going to do today is, as we talked about the subject here, the do's and don'ts, is I want to bring to your attention what I consider three of the biggest mistakes or challenges that I see in the market, especially when it comes to licensing, successfully licensing your technology, and what you can do to avoid those mistakes. So just real quickly, a little background on myself. For those I haven't met, my business is on the licensing. I'm on the business development, the deal-making side. Austin is on the legal side. I'm on the deal-making side. What I do is work with clients, take their IP, figure out the strategy, the plan, how we're going to license it, who we're going to license it to, how we're going to do the outreach, what we're going to communicate to them, and then I go out and do the heavy lifting, a lot of business development and sales work that's reaching out to the companies. Believe it or not, many companies out there want your IP, they want to license it, but they have no formal intake process. Oftentimes, a lot of my business is simply going through a lot of contacts inside these companies to figure out who the right person is. I can talk about more of that later on. So I work with a variety of different types of IP. As Dan said, I do a lot of work in the medical device and medical technology space, oral health care, surgical devices, orthopedic devices. It really runs the gamut. A lot of interesting IP out there. So the first issue that I see a lot that most people run into, I would say, is no market validation. Most important thing you have to understand is that when you present an IP to a company, they want to know, first of all, does it work and will somebody buy it? If you have just a rough prototype or a concept and a lot of unanswered questions, it makes it very difficult for these companies to consider it. What are they looking for? What they're looking for are innovation, and intellectual property that can fill their pipelines. Big companies are getting out of the R&D business. You see that in pharmaceuticals. The medical device industry is following close behind. In fact, if you've been following the news, and recently Forbes did a survey, they said 80% of the medical device companies that they surveyed said they were looking for outside partnerships as a way to get the devices to fill their pipeline. The reason being is they're just too slow, the market's moving too quick. So this is critical. You don't have to sell a lot. You could just test market it. But you have to prove that it works and that somebody will buy it and document it with research, testimonials, whatever the case is. It doesn't have to be a lot. Of course, if you're selling it, it helps. What you're doing here is you're answering the question, is your device worth the risk? Because that's what it comes down to, is the risk. The risk if more development has to go into it, the risk if they have to do work with the FDA, whatever the case is. The other important thing to understand is the medical device industry is moving very quickly. Your technologies are moving very quickly. They don't last anymore. If you get 5 years out of it, you're lucky, because there's so much technology coming in, not only from the United States, but China, other parts of Asia, Central America, Eastern Europe. Medical device technology is a worldwide market, and there's a lot of inventors, a lot of innovation coming into the market very quickly. The second issue that they have is you're giving the wrong information. And generally I find this, the wrong information is that when you go to talk to a company, you go ahead and tell them the life history of how you evolved this technology, where it came from, the amount of money you put into it. You give them your life story. They don't want to hear that. In fact, many companies are reluctant to deal with individual inventors because of all the information that's provided. Oftentimes you disclose information you shouldn't be disclosing to them. What you want to do is you don't want to tell stories. The most important thing that you want to do is solve problems. You are problem solvers. That's what these companies have. They have problems. They have consumers with problems, healthcare problems. They want solutions to them, and that's what they're looking for. So the right information to give them is how your technology solves a problem. At the end of the day, it's show me the money. They want to know that they can make money with your IP, that it's going to address a market need, that it's got the profit margins in it, that's close to getting to the market. You see, the further away from it is the market, the more unknowns there are, the less testing you've done, development you've done, makes it harder, goes back to risk, means lower royalties. The bigger the markets, the more developed it is, the deeper it is into the market, higher royalties. We can discuss royalty rates, but it's important that you keep that in mind. The third issue, and this is a big one, is no due diligence, and you wind up with the wrong partner. I can tell you that the #1 success factor in licensing is the right partner. But if you get somebody a company that approaches you, and I'm not saying that every company is necessarily, that approaches you is necessarily the wrong one, you have to do some due diligence and figure out if they are the right partner. Because you have to remember, when you sign that licensing agreement, especially if you have a patent, you're in for life. To get out from underneath that could be very costly unless it's a situation where you mutually agree that you do want to get out. And believe me, I've seen some big problems with partners. So you must do your due diligence. You've got to check out the company. Can they handle the product? Are they right? More important, when you deal with a company, are you comfortable dealing with the company? Are you having good discussions? In my experience, having dealt with a lot of companies, there's certain signs that you can tell whether or not you're getting along with the company. Are they responding to you on a timely basis, or are they dragging their feet? Are you supposed to receive a proposal that doesn't come from weeks? Do they tell you one thing and does another thing show up? Okay, these are all signs, and that's why it's important to do your due diligence, because you want to find out as much as you can. And by the way, the more you know about that company, the stronger position it's going to give you for negotiating with the company. And the thing to keep in mind when you're looking at companies is one size does not fit all. Many times you'll have companies approach you and say, we want exclusive, exclusive for the world, exclusive for all distribution channels. That's why you have to do your due diligence. There's exclusives and there's exclusives. And the thing about knowing what a company does is what markets are they going to go after. Remember, a licensing agreement is performance-based, and you want to know if somebody is going to get exclusive, they have to earn the right to continue with that exclusive. And that's why you want to make sure that as you deal with a company, you have to understand what their strengths are, what they're going to do, how they're going to do it, and what their market strengths are. So in wrapping it up, let me just summarize this by saying, when's the right time to license? As I mentioned, I took you through some of the challenging areas. The right time to license it is when you've done your test marketing, validated the technology, gotten into the market, getting the testimonials, and you're starting to move on the upswing toward revenues. That's the time when you've taken the bulk of the risk out of your IP, and when companies would be more likely to license it. So in summarizing, avoiding the 3 top mistakes is prove that it works, show them the money, and do your due diligence. So that wraps up this part of the presentation. For those of you who are interested, I offer a newsletter. You can sign up at my website. I put it out every week with articles on licensing, strategy, different issues, and keep you posted on the latest in the licensing world. So with that, I'm going to close the presentation, and now Austin and I are going to open it up to questions from you, because we always find that I'm sure a lot of you have questions, and that it's always helpful for others to hear what your challenges are.